Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched the stars through the main screen. The ship moved quietly through space toward the outer rim where 3 star systems had gone silent in the past month. No distress calls, no final messages, nothing at all. One day they were there and the next day they were gone. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years since humanity joined the Galactic Federation. He had seen strange things before, but nothing like this. Entire civilizations did not just disappear without leaving any trace behind them. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked up to him holding her data pad. She looked worried and her usual smile was gone. Lisa was the best scientist Jake had ever worked with, and if she was scared, then something was very wrong. "Captain, I have been studying the sensor data from the missing systems," Lisa said. "The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. The quantum signatures show massive distortions in space-time itself." Jake nodded and looked at the data on her pad. The numbers meant little to him, but he trusted Lisa completely. She had saved their lives more times than he could count with her quick thinking and deep knowledge of alien science. "What could cause this kind of damage to space itself?" Jake asked. "I do not know," Lisa replied, "but whatever did this has technology far beyond anything the Federation has ever seen. The power levels are off the charts. On Earth, Admiral Carl Peterson sat in his office reading reports from the Outer Rim. As head of human colonial defense, Carl was responsible for protecting human settlements across the galaxy. The disappearing star systems worried him more than he let anyone know. Humans were still newcomers to galactic politics. Most alien species had been part of the Federation for thousands or even millions of years. They looked at humans as young and inexperienced children who did not understand the dangers of deep space. Carl picked up his communication device and called Ambassador Nicole Torres on the Federation capital world. Nicole answered quickly, and Carl could see the stress on her face through the video link. "Carl, the Galactic Council is in panic," Nicole said. "The older species are talking about things I have never heard before. They keep mentioning something called the Devourers and speaking in languages so old that the translation computers cannot understand them." "What are they saying about the missing systems?" Carl asked. "They claim this has happened before, long before humans existed. Ancient species that lived millions of years ago faced the same threat. Entire galactic clusters were consumed and left empty." Carl felt a chill run down his spine. The Federation contained over 400 different species, and some of them were older than the solar system itself. If they were afraid, then humanity was facing something terrible. Meanwhile, the UES Defiant reached the edge of the Kepler system, where a thriving colony of 2 billion people had lived just weeks ago. Jake ordered the ship to drop out of faster-than-light travel and prepare for detailed scans. What they found shocked everyone on the bridge. The planets were still there, but they looked wrong. The surfaces were gray and lifeless with no signs of atmosphere or water. The cities that had covered the main world were gone as if they had been carefully removed. "Life signs?" Jake asked his tactical officer. "Zero, Captain. No life anywhere in the system. Not even bacteria or simple organisms. Everything is gone." Lisa ran her scanners across the dead worlds and shook her head in disbelief. "The planets have been stripped clean. All organic matter, all water, even the minerals that support life have been taken. What is left behind is just empty rock." "How is that possible?" Jake asked. "I do not know, Captain. This level of matter extraction would require technology that can manipulate atoms individually across an entire planet. No species in the Federation has that kind of power." As they prepared to investigate the next dead system, long-range sensors detected something approaching from deeper in space. A large Federation fleet was moving toward them at maximum speed. Jake ordered his ship to intercept them and find out what was happening. The fleet was led by Admiral Zex Corrin of the Alterian Navy. The Alterians were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Federation. They had never been defeated in war, and their technology was considered the best in the galaxy. Seeing their mighty ships running in fear made Jake realize how serious the situation had become. Admiral Zex Corrin appeared on the communication screen. The normally proud Alterian looked exhausted and beaten. His blue skin was pale and his 6 arms shook as he spoke. "Human vessel, you must leave this area immediately," Zex Corrin said. "The Kythera have returned and nothing can stop them. We barely escaped with our lives." "Who are the Kythera?" Jake asked. "The Xeno Conquerors from the time before time. They consume entire worlds and grow stronger with each victory. My fleet of 300 ships was destroyed in minutes. We could not even damage their vessels." Jake looked at Lisa, who was recording everything the Altarian admiral said. This was the first real information they had gotten about the threat facing the galaxy. "What do they want?" Jake asked. "Everything," Zexcorin replied. "They will not stop until every living world is dead and empty." The ancient records speak of their last visit millions of years ago. Whole civilizations fled to other galaxies just to escape them. The Altarian fleet continued toward the inner worlds, carrying news that would shake the entire Federation. Jake ordered his ship to follow but maintain distance. He needed to report what they had learned to Admiral Peterson and Ambassador Torres. As the UES Defiant changed course, Lisa continued studying the data from the dead systems. She found patterns in the quantum distortions that suggested the attackers used some form of extra-dimensional technology. They were not just advanced aliens, but something far more dangerous. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "I think the Kythera exist partially outside normal space and time. That would explain how they can manipulate matter so completely, and why our weapons cannot touch them." Jake nodded grimly. Humanity had faced many challenges since joining the galactic community, but nothing like this. An enemy that could destroy entire star systems and existed beyond the normal rules of physics was unlike anything in human experience. The news would soon reach Earth and the other human colonies. Admiral Peterson would have to decide how humanity should respond to a threat that had terrified advanced alien species for millions of years. Ambassador Torres would need to help coordinate a defense against enemies that seemed impossible to fight. But Jake had learned something important during his years in space. Humans had a talent for finding solutions that others missed. They were young and inexperienced compared to the ancient alien species. But that might be exactly what the galaxy needed. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to ignore what everyone else said was impossible. The attack on the Altarian core worlds came without warning. 50 billion people lived across 12 planets that had been the center of galactic civilization for over 50 million years. The Altarians had built their empire when humans were still learning to make fire, and their technology was considered the most advanced in the known galaxy. Took the Kythera exactly 4 hours to destroy it all. General Marcus Webb received the news while reviewing defense plans at Human Military Command on Earth. The report was simple and terrible. The entire Altarian system was gone. Not conquered or occupied, but completely empty of all life. 50 billion souls had simply vanished without a trace. Marcus was Earth's top military strategist and had spent 30 years studying warfare across the galaxy. He had learned from the victories and defeats of hundreds of different species, but nothing in his experience prepared him for an enemy that could eliminate the Federation's most powerful civilization in a single morning. Dr. Kevin Park was working in his laboratory when the emergency alert came through. As humanity's leading expert on exotic matter and energy, Kevin had been studying the quantum signatures from the missing outer rim systems. The data from the Altarian attack was 1,000 times stronger and more complex. "This is impossible," Kevin muttered as he analyzed the readings. The energy levels required for this level of matter conversion would need the output of an entire star. But the signatures show it happened almost instantly across 12 different planets. Kevin had always been fascinated by theoretical physics that other species considered too dangerous to study. The Federation had strict rules about certain types of research, especially anything involving dimensional manipulation or matter-energy conversion. They claimed such experiments had led to disasters in the distant past. But Kevin was human, and humans had a reputation for ignoring warnings about dangerous science. Now he wondered if that reckless curiosity might be exactly what the galaxy needed. Commander Beth Rodriguez led her reconnaissance ship through the debris field where the Altarian homeworld had once been. Beth was one of the best scouts in the human fleet, known for getting close to dangerous targets and returning with crucial intelligence. What she found in the dead system was worse than anyone had imagined. The Kythera had not simply destroyed the Altarian worlds. They had converted them into something else entirely. The matter that had once been cities, oceans, and living beings now formed strange geometric patterns floating in space. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Beth asked her science officer. "I am trying to understand it, Commander. The matter appears to be organized into some kind of collection or storage system, like they are saving it for later use." Beth moved her ship closer to one of the geometric formations. Her sensors detected massive amounts of organized energy flowing through crystalline structures that had once been an entire continent. The Kythera were not just destroying worlds, they were harvesting them. "Commander Rodriguez," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Admiral Zex Corin of the remaining Alterian fleet. You must leave this area immediately. The Kythera ships could return at any moment." Beth looked at her screens and saw 3 Alterian vessels hiding behind the system's outer moon. The proud warships that had once ruled half the galaxy were now reduced to hiding like frightened children. "Admiral, we need to understand what we are fighting," Beth replied. "My orders are to gather as much information as possible about Kythera technology and capabilities." "Your species does not understand," Zex Corin said. "The Kythera are not merely advanced aliens. They have transcended the normal limits of matter and energy. They exist partially in dimensions beyond our ability to perceive or affect." Beth had heard similar reports from other survivors, but she needed to see the evidence for herself. She ordered her ship to begin detailed scans of the harvested matter formations while staying ready to flee if necessary. The data she collected would change everything. Humans thought they knew about physics and warfare. The Kythera technology operated on principles that seemed to violate every known law of science. But Kevin Park would later realize that was exactly the point. Back on Earth, General Webb was meeting with leaders from across the human colonies. The news from the Alterian system had reached every human world, and panic was starting to spread. People wanted to know if Earth's defenses could stop an enemy that had destroyed the galaxy's most powerful civilization. "We need to face reality," Webb told the assembled leaders. "Every advanced species in the Federation is either fleeing or preparing to surrender. The Zephyrian Empire has abandoned 40 star systems without firing a shot. The Crystalline Collective is evacuating their core worlds. Species that have never known defeat are running in terror." "What about our defenses?" asked the governor of New Texas Colony. "Useless," Webb replied honestly. "Our most powerful weapons cannot affect targets that exist partially outside normal spacetime. We might as well be throwing rocks at ghosts." But Webb had not become Earth's top general by giving up when faced with impossible odds. Humanity had always succeeded by finding unconventional solutions to overwhelming problems. While other species tried to match their enemies' strengths, humans had a talent for attacking weaknesses that others could not see. Dr. Park burst into the meeting carrying his analysis of the Alterian attack data. His excitement was obvious despite the terrible circumstances they faced. "General, I think I understand how the Kythera technology works," Kevin said. "They use dimensional phasing to exist in multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Most of their mass and energy exists in higher dimensions where our weapons cannot reach them. Can we develop similar technology?" Webb asked. "Not in time to save the galaxy," Kevin replied. "But I have another idea. What if instead of trying to match their dimensional technology, we force them back into normal space, where they can be hurt?" Kevin explained his theory using diagrams and equations that made little sense to the military leaders but filled them with the first hope they had felt. Since the crisis began, the Kythera's greatest strength might also be their weakness if humans were clever enough to exploit it. Meanwhile, Ambassador Nicole Torres was attending an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The great chamber that had once been filled with the proud representatives of 400 species was now nearly empty. Most civilizations had already fled to distant galaxies or hidden themselves in remote star systems. The few species that remained were paralyzed by fear and ancient memories. The oldest member spoke of the last Kythera invasion, millions of years ago when entire galactic clusters had been consumed. Before the enemy mysteriously vanished back into dark space, they "We'll come for the inner worlds next," said Ambassador, 4th of the Centaurian Republic. "We must evacuate the core systems and hope they lose interest as they did before." "Running away did not work for the Alterians," Nicole replied. "The Kythera found them despite all their defenses and technology." "We need to fight back. Fight back," 4th laughed bitterly. "Young human, your species has existed for barely an instant, compared to those the Kythera have already destroyed. What makes you think you can succeed where civilizations millions of years old have failed?" Nicole stood up and faced the assembled representatives. Her voice was calm but filled with determination that surprised even herself. "Because we do not know it is impossible," she said. "Every species here has ancient knowledge and wisdom that tells them the Kythera cannot be defeated. But humans do not have that knowledge. We see an enemy that needs to be stopped and we will find a way to stop them." The chamber fell silent as the remaining delegates considered her words. For the first time since the crisis began, someone was talking about victory instead of survival. "What do you propose?" asked the Syrian ambassador. "Give humanity the resources and authority to coordinate the defense of the galaxy," Nicole said. "Let us try approaches that your ancient wisdom says are impossible. If we fail, you can still run away. But if we succeed, we all survive together." It was an unprecedented request. Humanity was the youngest member of the Federation and had never held a major leadership position. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and the galaxy was running out of options. The vote was close, but Nicole's proposal passed. For the first time in galactic history, humans would lead a multi-species military alliance against an existential threat. As news of the decision spread across the remaining Federation worlds, reactions were mixed. Some species saw it as their last hope, while others believed it was simply a delay before the inevitable end. But on Earth, General Webb was already working with Dr. Park to develop new strategies and weapons based on human approaches to warfare. They would not try to match the Kythera's overwhelming power, but would instead attack in ways the ancient enemy would never expect. The galaxy's youngest species was about to teach the universe a lesson about the power of fresh thinking and stubborn determination. 6 months after the Kythera invasion began, humanity had transformed from galactic newcomers into the backbone of the resistance. Hidden bases spread across asteroid fields and rogue planets served as staging points for operations that would have seemed impossible just a year before. Engineer Amy Chen worked 18 hours a day in her laboratory aboard the converted mining station that served as humanity's primary research facility. The station had once processed rare metals from the Vega system, but now it housed the brightest minds from dozens of species, all working toward a single goal: finding a way to hurt the Kythera. Amy had been studying the quantum disruptor technology for 3 months, ever since Dr. Park's breakthrough with dimensional phase manipulation. The concept was simple in theory, but incredibly difficult to implement in practice. The weapon needed to sever the Kythera's connection to higher dimensions and force them back into normal space, where conventional weapons could destroy them. "The power requirements are still too high," Amy said to her assistant, a young Centaurian named Zach, 5th of 7. "We need to find a way to focus the disruption field more efficiently." Zach examined the latest test results and made a suggestion that only someone from his mathematical species could have conceived. "What if we use harmonic resonance instead of brute force? The Kythera dimensional anchors must have a natural frequency we can exploit." Amy smiled and began working on the new calculations. This was exactly why the human-led resistance was succeeding where others had failed. By combining the unique strengths of different species, they were creating solutions that no single civilization could have developed alone. Colonel Steve Mitchell prepared his Special Forces team for another raid behind Kythera lines. Steve had been a Marine for 20 years and had fought in conflicts across human space. But nothing had prepared him for warfare against enemies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. His team included soldiers from 6 different species, each chosen for specific abilities that complemented human tactical flexibility. The Alterian provided superior technology. The Syrian offered enhanced sensory capabilities, and the crystalline collective member could interface directly with enemy computer systems. "Remember, we go in fast and leave faster," Steve told his team as their stealth ship approached the occupied Rigel system. "Intelligence reports that the Kythera have finished harvesting the inner planets and are preparing to move on. We need to rescue as many survivors as possible before they leave." The Kythera had a pattern that human analysts had identified after studying dozens of attacks. They would consume the major population centers first, then spend weeks collecting smaller settlements and isolated outposts. This predictable behavior created windows of opportunity that Steve's teams exploited with surgical precision. The rescue mission went perfectly according to plan. While the main Kythera fleet was occupied with harvesting the system's asteroid mining facilities, Steve's team infiltrated the temporary prison ships where survivors were being held. The aliens had expected their captives to remain passive and hopeless like most species did when facing overwhelming force. They had not counted on human determination to never leave anyone behind. Dr. Rachel Kim studied the psychological profiles of captured Kythera drones in her mobile laboratory. Rachel was humanity's leading expert on xenobiology and had volunteered for the dangerous assignment of understanding the enemy's mental processes. What she discovered was both frightening and encouraging. The Kythera had achieved their transcendent abilities by sacrificing individual consciousness and creativity. Each drone was connected to a vast collective intelligence that made decisions based on patterns established millions of years ago. They are incredibly powerful, but also incredibly predictable, Rachel explained to General Webb during their weekly briefing. The Kythera respond to threats the same way they did during their last invasion. They expect species to either flee in terror or meet them in direct confrontation. What happens when we do neither? Webb asked. They become confused and make mistakes, Rachel replied. Their collective intelligence is designed to handle known variables, not adaptive strategies that change in response to their actions. This insight was already proving valuable in combat. Human commanders had begun using tactics that deliberately violated standard military doctrine, keeping the Kythera off balance and uncertain about how to respond effectively. Captain Paul Davis tested humanity's newest warship design in a simulated battle against Kythera fleet formations. The ship was smaller and faster than traditional Federation vessels. Designed around Amy Chen's quantum disruptor technology and powered by hybrid, human-alien engineering. Paul had been a test pilot for 15 years and had flown everything from atmospheric fighters to massive battleships. But the new human vessels were unlike anything he had ever experienced. They combined the best features of dozens of different technological approaches into something completely new. The maneuverability is incredible, Paul reported to the design team after his latest test flight. We can match Kythera mobility while delivering the quantum weapons effectively. The only limitation is pilot endurance during extended engagements. The new ships were being built in secret facilities across human space, using resources and expertise contributed by refugee populations from conquered worlds. Species that had lost their homeworlds were eager to contribute to any effort that might give them a chance for revenge engineering. Teams worked around the clock to produce as many vessels as possible before the Kythera discovered their locations. Every ship that rolled out of the hidden shipyards was immediately assigned to one of the growing human-led battle groups that were beginning to turn isolated. Engagements in the Resistance's favor, the first major test of human innovation, came during the Battle of Proxima Station. A Kythera fleet of 30 vessels had cornered a mixed group of Federation refugees near the abandoned mining facility. The aliens were preparing to harvest the survivors when Captain Davis arrived with a squadron of 12 new human warships. The battle lasted only 20 minutes, but its impact would be felt across the galaxy. For the first time since the invasion began, a Kythera fleet had been completely destroyed with minimal losses to the defenders. The quantum disruptors worked exactly as designed, forcing the enemy ships back into normal space where they could be destroyed by conventional weapons. News of the victory spread rapidly through the resistance networks. Species that had given up hope began volunteering for human-led operations. The Kythera were not invincible after all, and humanity had proven it was possible to fight back effectively. Amy Chen received the battle reports in her laboratory and felt a mixture of pride and determination. Her weapons had worked perfectly, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Kythera would adapt to the new threat and develop countermeasures. The Resistance needed to stay ahead of them by continuing to innovate and evolve. She immediately began working on improvements to the quantum disruptor technology while also exploring completely new approaches to anti-Kythera warfare. The enemy's greatest weakness was their inability to adapt quickly to unexpected threats, so the key to victory was maintaining that element of surprise for as long as possible. Colonel Mitchell received orders for an even more ambitious operation, a direct assault on a Kythera command facility in the Vega system. Intelligence indicated that the aliens were using the facility to coordinate attacks across a 100-light-year radius. Destroying it would disrupt their operations and buy the Resistance valuable time to prepare larger defensive actions. The mission would require everything humanity had learned about fighting the Kythera. Mitchell's team would use the new warships to penetrate enemy defenses, deploy quantum disruptors to neutralize the facility's dimensional shields, and extract critical intelligence about future Kythera plans. This is the kind of operation that wins wars, Mitchell told his volunteers as they prepared for the assault. We are going to hit them where they think they are safe and show the galaxy that nowhere is beyond our reach. Dr. Kim's psychological analysis had identified the perfect timing for the attack. The Kythera command structure operated on predictable cycles based on their harvesting schedules. There would be a brief window when the facility would be minimally defended, while the main fleet moved to new targets. As the human task force prepared to launch their most daring operation yet, word came from Earth that Admiral Peterson had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. For the first time in Federation history, a human would have ultimate authority over multi-species military operations. The appointment was controversial among the older alien civilizations, but results spoke louder than tradition. Humanity had achieved more success against the Kythera in 6 months than all other species combined had managed in millions of years. The galaxy was beginning to understand that sometimes the best solution to an ancient problem was a completely fresh perspective, backed by stubborn determination to never give up. 1 year after humanity's first victory against the Kythera, Admiral Jack Turner commanded a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from dozens of different species flew in perfect formation, their crews trained in human tactical doctrine and equipped with hybrid technologies that combined the best innovations from across the Federation. Jack had started the war as a simple cruiser captain, but his success in implementing human strategies with alien crews had earned him rapid promotion to fleet command. Now he led the spearhead of Operation Homecoming, the ambitious plan to reclaim the Federation's former core worlds from Kythera occupation. All ships report ready for jump. Admiral, announced his tactical officer, a young Alterian who had volunteered for human service after her homeworld's destruction. Dr. Clark, are your predictions still accurate? Jack asked the scientist at the fleet's intelligence center. Dr. Linda Clark reviewed her latest calculations on the mobile command platform that served as the operations nerve center. Linda had spent months developing mathematical models of Kythera behavior patterns, treating the seemingly chaotic enemy as a complex but ultimately predictable system. The main Kythera fleet will be occupied with harvesting operations in the Centauri sector for another 6 hours, Linda reported. That gives us a clean approach to the target system and enough time to establish defensive positions before they can respond. Jack nodded and gave the order that would launch the largest coordinated offensive of the war. 300 ships from 20 different species jumped simultaneously toward the Alterian core system, where the Kythera had established one of their major harvesting facilities. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, just as they had practiced in dozens of simulations. Human coordination and communication protocols allowed the diverse mix of vessels to operate as a single unified force instead of the chaotic collections that had characterized earlier Federation military efforts. General Ryan Foster monitored the operation. From his command center on the liberated world of New Geneva, Ryan had been the architect of Operation Homecoming, designing a campaign that would systematically reclaim lost territory through superior strategy rather than overwhelming force. Phase 1 is complete, reported his communications officer. Admiral Turner's fleet has secured the Alterian system and begun deploying the Quantum Disruption Network. The network was Amy Chen's latest innovation, a series of interconnected devices that could create massive disruption fields across entire star systems. Once activated, the network would prevent Kythera vessels from using their dimensional phasing abilities anywhere within its range. Ryan smiled as he reviewed the tactical displays. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, but he knew the real test would come when the Kythera realized what was happening and launched their counterattack. Signal all reserve fleets to begin Phase 2, Ryan ordered. We need to have the core world secured before the enemy can organize an effective response. Captain Susan Walsh received the Phase 2 orders while her squadron was engaged in a fierce battle near Kepler Station. Susan had become something of a legend among the resistance forces, known for her ability to win seemingly impossible battles through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. The Kythera had sent a massive armada to retake Kepler Station, recognizing its strategic importance as a gateway to the inner worlds. Susan's small force was heavily outnumbered, but they had several advantages that the enemy did not expect. All ships, implement pattern Delta 7, Susan ordered as the Kythera vessels closed in on her position. Remember, we only need to hold them for 2 more hours until reinforcements arrive. Pattern Delta 7 was one of the new tactical formations developed by human strategists specifically for fighting against superior numbers. It involved coordinated hit-and-run attacks designed to break up enemy formations and prevent them from using their numerical advantage effectively. Susan's pilots executed the maneuver perfectly, their mixed human-alien crews working together with a precision that amazed even experienced commanders. The Kythera found themselves unable to maintain formation as individual groups of defenders struck from multiple directions before disappearing back into the asteroid field. The battle raged for 3 hours with both sides taking heavy casualties, but Susan's force held their positions until Admiral Turner's fleet arrived from the Alterian system. The combined forces then launched a devastating counterattack that destroyed the entire Kythera armada. News of the victory at Kepler Station spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time since the invasion began, the Resistance had not only defeated a major Kythera force but had done so while defending, rather than attacking. The psychological impact was enormous. Species that had been preparing to flee to other galaxies suddenly began volunteering for military service. The Crystalline Collective offered their advanced manufacturing capabilities to help build more quantum disruptor networks. Even the proud Zephyrian Empire emerged from hiding to contribute their powerful warships to the resistance effort. President Diana Lee addressed the reformed Galactic Council from the liberated capital world that had been renamed Unity Station. Diana had been elected as humanity's first galactic leader not through conquest, but through recognition of her ability to bring diverse species together toward common goals. 1 year ago, the galaxy faced extinction, Diana said to the assembled representatives. Ancient civilizations fled in terror from an enemy that seemed invincible. But we chose to stand and fight, not as separate species competing for survival, but as one united community defending our shared home. The council chamber erupted in cheers from delegates representing over 200 different worlds. Many of these species had been bitter enemies before the Kythera invasion, but working together in the resistance had forged bonds stronger than their old rivalries. The Kythera believed they could conquer us by dividing us and turning our diversity into weakness, Diana continued. Instead, we have shown that our differences are our greatest strength when combined with common purpose and mutual respect. Dr. Clark's latest analysis confirmed what everyone already suspected. The Kythera were losing the war because they could not adapt to the rapid changes in human-led strategy and technology. Their collective intelligence was designed to handle predictable opponents, not enemies that learned and evolved with each engagement. The enemy response time to new tactics has increased from hours to days, Linda reported to the Military Leadership Council. They are struggling to process information that does not fit their established patterns. Each innovation we introduce creates more confusion in their decision-making systems. This insight led to the development of an entirely new approach to warfare, deliberate tactical evolution. Human commanders began changing their methods constantly, not because the old ways were failing, but simply to keep the enemy confused and reactive. Amy Chen unveiled her most ambitious project yet during a demonstration at the primary research facility. The new quantum cascade weapon could neutralize entire Kythera fleets by creating chain reactions in their dimensional anchoring systems. The beauty of this design is that it uses their own technology against them, Amy explained to the assembled scientists and military leaders. The more ships they have in formation, the more devastating the cascade effect becomes. Field tests of the cascade weapon were scheduled for the final phase of Operation Homecoming, the assault on the Kythera's primary staging area in what had once been the Federation's most heavily defended system. General Foster reviewed the plans for the climactic battle while considering how much had changed since the invasion began. Humanity had evolved from desperate defenders into confident liberators, leading a galactic alliance that was stronger and more united than anything in recorded history. The Kythera had made a critical error when they chose to invade during humanity's time. Any other period in galactic history would have seen the older species retreat into isolation or attempt to match the enemy's overwhelming power through conventional means, but humanity brought something new to galactic warfare. The stubborn refusal to accept defeat combined with the creativity to find unconventional solutions to impossible problems. They had turned the galaxy's diversity from a weakness into an unstoppable strength. As the final phase of Operation Homecoming prepared to launch, Message broadcasts from newly liberated worlds poured in with reports of Kythera forces retreating from systems they had held for over a year. The ancient enemy was finally learning what it meant to face an opponent that would never stop adapting, never stop fighting, and never stop believing in victory. The tide had turned, and the galaxy was coming home. 2 years after humanity's first encounter with the Kythera, Fleet Admiral Gary Stone led the largest military force in galactic history toward the enemy's home dimension. The assembled fleet contained ships from every surviving Federation species, all unified under human command structure and equipped with the latest quantum cascade weapons. Gary had been a simple transport pilot when the war began, but his natural talent for coordinating complex operations had earned him rapid promotion through the ranks. Now he commanded the final assault that would either end the Kythera threat forever or result in the destruction of everything they had fought to protect. "Dimensional gateway is stable, Admiral," reported his chief engineer, a crystalline collective member whose mathematical mind could calculate hyperspace coordinates that no biological brain could comprehend. "All fleets report ready for transdimensional insertion." The gateway itself was humanity's greatest technological achievement, built using theories that the ancient species had considered too dangerous to explore. Dr. Kevin Park had spent 2 years developing the dimensional manipulation technology that would allow the Allied forces to take the war directly to the enemy's stronghold. "Dr. Brooks, what are the latest intelligence reports from our advanced scouts?" Gary asked. Dr. Ashley Brooks reviewed the data streaming in from reconnaissance drones that had been mapping the Kythera home dimension for weeks. Ashley had become the galaxy's leading expert on post-war reconstruction planning, but her immediate concern was understanding what they would face on the other side of the gateway. "The enemy has concentrated their entire remaining fleet in a defensive formation around what appears to be their primary harvesting facility," Ashley reported. "The structure is massive, easily the size of a small moon, and contains the converted matter from thousands of conquered worlds." Gary nodded grimly. The scouts had discovered that the Kythera were not simply destroying civilizations for conquest, but were harvesting them to fuel their own transcendence. Every world they consumed made them slightly more powerful, and over millions of years they had accumulated energy reserves beyond imagination. But humanity had learned that even infinite power had weaknesses when it was applied without creativity or adaptability. The Kythera had become so dependent on their overwhelming strength that they had forgotten how to fight opponents who refused to be overwhelmed. "All ships, begin dimensional transition," Gary ordered. "Remember, we go in together and we come home together. Nobody gets left behind." The massive fleet disappeared from normal space and emerged in the strange realm that the Kythera called home. Reality worked differently here, with physics that bent and twisted according to rules that no Federation scientist had ever studied. But human adaptability allowed the Allied forces to adjust their tactics in real time as they encountered each new challenge. The Kythera response was exactly what Dr. Rachel Kim's psychological profiles had predicted. Faced with an invasion of their most sacred space, the ancient enemy fell back on strategies that had served them for millions of years but were completely predictable to human analysts. "They are forming the same defensive patterns they used during their last defeat 3 million years ago," reported the fleet intelligence officer. "Admiral Stone, we can exploit their positioning with a modified Delta 7 assault formation." Gary smiled as he gave the orders that would begin the final battle of the war. The Kythera had expected either a desperate frontal assault or a terrified retreat, but humanity had chosen a third option that their collective intelligence could not process: a coordinated attack that used their own dimensional technology against them. Amy Chen's quantum cascade weapons performed beyond all expectations in the enemy's home dimension. The Kythera ships found themselves forced back into normal matter as their dimensional anchors were systematically severed by technology based on their own principles, but applied with human ingenuity. "Primary harvesting facility is taking damage," reported the tactical display operator. "The cascade effect is spreading through their entire defensive grid, but the most devastating blow to the Kythera came not from superior weapons, but from something they had never encountered in millions of years of conquest, an enemy that fought to liberate rather than to dominate." President Diana Lee had insisted that the assault fleet carry teams of specialists whose job was not to destroy the harvesting facility but to reverse its effects. As the battle raged around them, human-led rescue teams used modified, dimensional technology to restore the harvested matter back to its original forms. Entire civilizations that had been consumed by the Kythera began materializing throughout the enemy's home dimension. Alterian survivors who had been trapped in energy patterns for over a year suddenly found themselves free and eager for revenge against their captors. The psychological shock to the Kythera collective was overwhelming. They had never faced opponents who came not just to defeat them, but to undo everything they had accomplished. Their entire purpose for existence was being systematically reversed by enemies who refused to accept that victory required destruction. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is beginning to break formation," reported the sensor operator. "Individual Kythera ships are attempting to flee the battle zone." For the first time in their millions of years of existence, the Kythera were experiencing fear. The collective intelligence that had guided their conquests across countless galaxies was fragmenting under the stress of facing a truly unpredictable opponent. Gary pressed the advantage by ordering a general advance on all fronts. The Allied fleet moved deeper into the enemy dimension, liberating more harvesting facilities and freeing civilizations that had been consumed decades or even centuries. The final confrontation came when the human fleet reached the core of the Kythera power structure, a massive entity that existed as pure consciousness spanning multiple dimensions. This was the source of the collective intelligence that had coordinated their conquests, and it was completely unprepared for what humanity offered. Instead of trying to destroy the entity, Diana Lee herself led a diplomatic mission to communicate directly with the Kythera consciousness. What she found was not an evil intelligence bent on conquest, but a species that had transcended individual existence so completely that they had forgotten what it meant to grow and change. "You have existed unchanged for millions of years," Diana said to the vast intelligence. "But existence without growth is not life, it is just elaborate death. We offer you something you have forgotten, the chance to become something new." The negotiation that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Humanity offered the Kythera a choice: continue their static existence as harvesters of other civilizations or join the galactic community as equals who could contribute their knowledge while learning to grow and adapt again. The decision took 3 days of intense discussion within the collective consciousness. In the end, the Kythera chose transformation over stagnation, agreeing to restore all harvested civilizations and to work with the Federation in developing new approaches to dimensional science. Brooks began implementing her post-war reconstruction plans even before the fighting officially ended. Her teams worked with liberated civilizations to rebuild not just their worlds, but their confidence in a shared galactic future. "The key is not to return to how things were before," Ashley explained to the newly formed Galactic Reconstruction Council. "We have the opportunity to build something better, a civilization that combines the wisdom of ancient species with the adaptability and innovation that humanity has demonstrated." Fleet Admiral Stone supervised the return of the Allied forces to normal space, but many of the ships carried unexpected passengers. Kythera individuals who had chosen to separate from the collective consciousness and learn what it meant to exist as independent beings. The integration of former enemies into galactic society presented new challenges, but they were the kind of problems that post-war civilizations were eager to solve. The Kythera possessed knowledge of dimensional physics that could revolutionize transportation, communication, and energy production throughout the Federation. President Lee addressed the galaxy from Unity Station 6 months after the end of the war. Behind her stood representatives from over 500 different species, including several Kythera individuals who had chosen to serve in the new galactic government. 2 years ago, we faced extinction from an enemy that seemed invincible, Diana said. Today, we welcome that enemy as partners in building a stronger and more diverse galactic community. We have learned that there are no problems that cannot be solved when different perspectives work together with common purpose. The reconstruction efforts continued for years, but they were marked by a spirit of optimism and cooperation that surprised even the most hopeful observers. Species that had been enemies for millions of years found ways to resolve ancient conflicts. Civilizations that had isolated themselves in fear began contributing to shared scientific and cultural projects. Humanity's role in galactic leadership was confirmed not through conquest but through recognition of their unique ability to bring out the best in others. Human diplomatic and military leaders found themselves in demand throughout the galaxy as mediators, innovators, and coordinators of multi-species initiatives.